2, 1. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Topical Talkology with our seasonal version for Corona. It is now the end of October. We're looking at another national lockdown. It's not 4 o'clock today yet, and that's when Boris Johnson is going to be addressing the nation sagely, or not, as the case may be. I'm welcoming Alexei again. Thank you so much, Alexei, for agreeing to come and be my sparring partner today for the podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Take it away, Alexei. What do you think is? How do you feel about what's been going on?
I think there is, to state the obvious, there's obviously a lot of unrest, a lot of minimum low-level anxiety up to very high levels of anxiety with people that are really stressed at the moment. We're not just talking about the ones that have lost their jobs. We're talking the ones that might be losing their jobs, the ones that really are quite afraid of, well, now the furlough is finishing again today, and this new job support scheme is going to be kicking in, which is a bit of a mess, a bit of a muddle. I think it's still positive, but what we're saying offline before was that we now have, as a countries, we now have data. We can't use the excuse that we didn't have anything, we didn't know anything, it's all new. We're now, end of October, going into November, we now know that all a lockdown will do is put the pause button on for a little while. The excuse of, yes, we need to get the hospitals ready so that we won't be overwhelmed, is actually a pathetic one, because we have these Nightingale hospitals ready and raring to go, but guess what? We don't have staff to put in them because we didn't have staff to put in these normal hospitals in the first place. So it's a bit of a joke. Sorry, it's a laughingstock. And what we were saying offline was, are we, it seems to be a minority of people that can actually see the wood from the trees and see that this is, at best, farcical, at worst, criminal. It's absolutely, you've got people's livelihoods and jobs that were going very well, that had a very viable business providing a viable service, a viable product that people were wanting and needing, and suddenly from one day to the next, it switched off. And it's scaring the absolute life out of people.
In addition to criminal, if one is directly impeding or impairing the integrity of the state, then that is treasonous, theoretically. And going back to what you said about not having the staff, they never did have the staff. That's why the Nightingale hospitals were never used. See, I didn't know this until I actually spoke to someone high up in Imperial College several weeks ago who said exactly that nobody used the Nightingale hospitals because you had to send your own staff with each patient, and usually it had to be 2 staff with each patient. So the Nightingale hospitals were simply too expensive to use. Now, the other thing to mention is that everyone was panicking. Well, the media were trying to make people panic about ITU beds filling up recently, until someone else pointed out that actually ITU beds always fill up at this time of year, and it was seasonal norm. And then someone else said, well, actually, the fact is we don't have functional reserve in the system. We don't have, even though we might have a seasonal norm, there's no reserve capacity. And what that means is we don't have the staff to actually serve the rest of the beds that are still empty. And the next question will be, well, since we know this, and since we know lockdown doesn't control but simply pushes the curve, why haven't we been spending a minuscule amount of those billions of pounds spent on furlough and job support and eat out to dine out and all this nonsense on training staff so we can keep the rest of the economy open? And someone said, well, it takes years to train staff. No, it doesn't. There are plenty of junior doctors who would love an extra diploma in ITU on an intensive 3-month course funded by the state. And plenty of student nurses who would love the same thing on their CVs. to be allowed to serve the nation in the job that they love. Versus, if you actually go and talk to people who work in hospitals, they will tell you that their hospital is either empty and that the coronavirus is grossly exaggerated by the media. My own GP said that actually so far he only knows of 4 cases of corona in the entire catchment area of his practice and 0 deaths. And another GP who has been kind enough to be a guest on this podcast said he's had one death in someone similar to Boris Johnson, who is, let's face it, overweight and unhealthy and likely to be vitamin D3 deficient. Go ahead, Alexia. I can see you wanted to.
Well, yes, but the concern I've got is, well, look, let's take things logically, which unfortunately common sense and logic are in very short supply nowadays, as we can see with our politicians that have no grasp on reality whatsoever. Is this virus is going to be with us for a while. It will mutate into something else, guaranteed, if it hasn't already. So are we going to shut down the whole economy every time we have a virus? Silver bullet with the vaccine. We know that if and when that comes out, will everybody be forced to take it? And the ones that do take it, will it work with everybody? You know it won't. So what do? Shield everyone? Because I can see a cartoonist. You know when you see the lovely cartoons on the back of a newspaper and you see the whole world all full with greenery and lovely buildings and prosperity. And as you go from the left to the right of this page, you see less and less trees, less and less buildings, to the point where you literally have somebody cross-legged in a gown, humming with beads in their hair, going, look, at least I can meditate, but there's nothing left in the world because it's all been taken away. And then when the virus has been eradicated or has disappeared, there'll be nothing left to do.
Well, there was that famous, I don't know whether you know Dave Allen, who was that stand-up comedian who had his own series.
Yes, I do.
There were many very funny things that he did. One of them was when everyone had this craze of nuclear shelters, and so he did a sketch of this man with his nuclear shelter, and there he was he was listening to the news. There was the news that Russia had launched its nukes, and he goes into his nuclear shelter, and then he's listening every day to the news about when it's safe to come back out. And eventually, when it's safe to come back out, he comes out and he's jumping up and down in joy, and suddenly he realizes that the rest of humanity has been completely decimated, and he's jumping up and down on a heap of rubble.
But I think what is scary is that there is no, even some of the politicians themselves have written to the Prime Minister, 50 of them, to say, where is the end game? Even 50 politicians, I repeat, have asked the Prime Minister for an end game. People that wouldn't even think that far normally are realizing that people are losing hope. They need to have some kind of vision, strategy. Why are we doing this for? You want us now to do it again?
Even some journalists, even there's a radio presenter, Majid Nawaz, and I have to say he's a little bit more intellectual and logical than most of them, and he said exactly the same thing. Why not spend a tiny proportion of the billions of pounds on actually training staff and making hospital places available, if that is the reason that the rest of the economy and everyone's lives is being destroyed?
Excuse me, there's one thing that we hear a lot in the news, and nobody has pursued this in a logical, easy to understand way: testing. Why is it that Heathrow Airport, Boots Chemist, can come up with a very easy test that you can pay for, and that results in 20 minutes up to 2 hours? This in itself could allow people to travel. It would not destroy the aviation business. It would allow everybody to have the confidence to move around in society. If you're positive, you stay at home. If you're negative, you carry on. Depending which profession you're in is depending on how often you should be tested.
When did that test become available?
I'm not sure. I just heard it in the news a few days ago regarding boots, and Terminal 3 in Heathrow Airport, it started already, I think, about a week ago.
Okay, that's interesting. Because
so it's there. It's possible. So the private enterprise is able to do this. The guy, the CEO of Heathrow Airport, has got on his knees, and actually, it's a very interesting comment a few months ago. He said, why is it that my equivalent, the transport secretary I'm trying to get hold of in Germany, is in regular talks with the main airports, Frankfurt, Munich, and so on, regular weekly conversations as to how we can help each other. He said, I haven't had the chance to get through to my transport secretary. He will not take my calls. Yet, I'm watching my airport, amongst others, falling to pieces. 95% reduction in air traffic. It is absolutely ridiculous. And you're watching that happen in front of your eyes, and all you need to do is to put some money in some testing. That will work. It won't be perfect. You'll have false positives, we know that. But at least you'll be able to say, okay, you can fly. When you get to the other side, show your certificate that you're negative. Stay there a few days. Lovely. In 2 weeks' time, if you want to fly again, you have to produce another one. And just get things moving. It's not complicated, yet we are in November, more or less, 7-8 months down the line, and we're talking about testing as if it was 3 weeks ago. It's embarrassing. It really is
highly embarrassing.
We should have kits now. We should have ways of doing it that is automatic via the Boots network, which have hundreds of shops. You can go into your local Boots, paid by NHS if you're below a certain wage, whatever. It can be funded, partially funded, sponsored. There's so many ways of doing it.
And of course, the as usual, what happens is simple common sense is just another avenue for more scandal. So now there is the scandal of PPE being put into private hands, and billions of pounds being wasted on PPE that's both overpriced and doesn't work.
And the main supplier of PPE in the world is which country? China. Yes, isn't that funny?
It is funny.
Is that coincidental, not?
Indeed so. And indeed another acquaintance of mine who actually has exclusive distribution rights from a lot of factories for masks told me that right now he can supply me with more masks than are in physical existence. And he said what actually is happening is that these enormous warehouses are where the masks are being kept, and the masks are being bought and sold online with trillions of dollars changing hands every day, which is simply dirty money being laundered.
So it's like crypto mask currency.
That's it. So because it's totally non-traceable, it's just being bought and sold online digitally, and he said the Swiss banks are emptying out of the dirty money, and it's all flowing into America and the UK.
I think what is concerning is that when Boris Johnson started, we know the message was simple, so it was easy to convey that message, easy to communicate it, whatever it was, protect the NHS, stay at home, don't do anything, start getting depressed, find things to do, go on some useless social media, TikTok, and look at people doing silly things to keep your poor little brain from burning out, which is quite sad, to be honest with you. But anyway, and here we are 7 months later, and we might be doing it again.
Now, you see, here's the thing to bear in mind. Wherever there are lots of different theories about something, it usually means it's nonsense. I'll give you an example. One of the Amazon bestsellers at the moment is a book called Weightlifting is a Waste of Time and So is Cardio. And there are those of us who are regular gym goers will know that there is a common conundrum of should you do heavy weights with a few reps or light weights with lots of reps, and nobody knows. And indeed the common platitude is, well, it depends on your genetics and your body build. Well, the answer is because none of it works. In fact, have you ever seen someone who goes to the gym with you transform their physiques unless, of course, they never exercised and they exercised for the first time. And the answer is no. I mean, I've been going to the gym for decades, and I'll reach a certain fitness level and I plateau. And you can't accuse me of not doing it properly because I do it properly. The reason is, all these theories abound because the standard ways of exercising do not work. Because we can't achieve a proper muscle stimulus. Now, the